So I've debated doing a video on Lando, South Carolina for a long time. So the debate's always been in my head of whether or not there's really enough to even talk about or show you in the town of Lando with little to no evidence of the original mill itself. But there's been a lot of development going on around Lando for a lot of different reasons than there were back in the day when they were building a textile mill and using the river to power all their machinery. Lando was settled in the 1760s on a little river called Fishing Creek. As with all textile mills, rivers were the only natural power source that were easily harnessed to drive the machinery and later used to produce power for all the houses and employees that they would hire. For most of the 20th century, Manetta Mills in Lando was famous for their blankets. The mill closed in 1991 and the population estimates vary wildly over the last decade. Throughout the entire town of Lando, there are rezoning signs. So obviously the two new housing developments have not yet hit what the population really is in the town of Lando. When I grew up, many of the people in my family, an extended family, worked for the mills, or they had some connection to the mills throughout the 70s. But we as humans almost always remember negative things. And it seems that history is even worse about recording the worst things about almost anything. When I was a kid, people liked working for the mills. They were one of the best employers with the highest pay in the area. And I think more importantly, they had great cultures and they had regular corporate events for their employees and their families. And it was never forced fun. It seemed like it was always positive and upbeat and exciting for everybody, including the kids. Over the last years, I've heard people mention the company stores and them having a script that they can only pay to the company stores. They weren't real American dollars. I've heard all kinds of things that are negative about them. I don't remember any of that at all. I didn't work there, but I don't remember any of that. I remember them having baseball teams and building amusement parks in some cases for their employees and their family. And in the case of Manetta Mills in Lando, they even made sure there was a bus route that came down from Rock Hill, South Carolina into Lando so people could go see movies and go shopping and do whatever they wanted to do in a bigger town. Most of the mill that existed there is long since gone. There is still the admin office at the top of the hill above where the mill would be and above where the river and the railway line that they built existed. The only thing that's really left of the original mill building is the elevator shaft. I find it interesting that what attracted the industrialists to build a mill there to begin with was purely the river and I suppose a fairly temperate climate. And though I know very little about the new housing developments that are going up around Lando, I do know that it's a depressed area with lower land costs and a workforce that no longer has to be tied to a building. So working from home, as long as you have internet, is totally feasible pretty much anywhere in the world. One anecdote I learned while taking my kids on the tour at the museum was the fact that the buses on the little sign on the front of them that lit up said Lando Beach as the destination. The nickname Lando Beach comes from the fact that Fishing Creek produces a lot of sand. And when you were coming down the hill toward the bridge that goes over Fishing Creek and you had a full moon, you could see the sand on the shores of the river that looked just like a beach. Much later, in the last decade or two, there was a private club just above that same bridge and it was called Lando Beach Club.